All right, Brian. It is right now 4 p.m. Vietnam time, and it is 11 a.m. time in Europe right now. Hi, I am in Croatia right now, enjoying some time in Europe before I fly back to Vietnam. Today, we have our Founders Talk number 4, and we will discuss with Brian Letwin, the co-founder and CEO of Saigoneer. And just to share a little bit more information about Brian and I, like we had the chance to meet around like 5 years ago when I started my own startup. At that time, it was called Vice and became WisePass a couple years later. And during that time, I had the chance just to witness like how I started and how I evolved my business model and my ideas on connecting brands and consumers. But today is not really about me. Today's the focus is actually on Brian and then his own venture, Saigoneer. Hi, Brian. Thanks for
Hi,
joining
Len.
me today.
Thanks for having me.
Maybe like we won't waste time and just kickstart right now. Then the first thing I'd like to talk with you about Saigoneer is, well, like what is Saigoneer for you? Because I actually looked up on online on Crunchbase, like, and got some information such as like it's an online platform offering information under the categories of news, society, art, and culture, eat and drink, and more. So I'd like to have your perspective today about like how you started Saigoneer. What is Saigoneer for you?
Sure. So, to answer quickly just what it is, I would say, you could go into these different categories of news or society and arts and culture, and certainly that covers some of the broad strokes of the type of content that we cover. But at the end of the day, across all of those different categories, I think the main thing we try to do is inform and entertain and try to do our best to do both of those things at the same time. So when I moved to Saigon 10 years ago, uh, from New York, there are a lot of websites that help provide context for, as a New Yorker, where to eat, what to do, history, culture, things like that. And when I got here, I couldn't find anything in English. There were a few expat magazines, but outside of that, there was nothing more than if you were, let's say a bit more culturally sophisticated, if you've been here for more than a year or something, probably instructions about how to drive a motorbike or order pho is not something you really need anymore. So yeah, you could say the advanced class or something like that. And then in talking with Vietnamese as well, I could see there was also something lacking. I would find information about Vietnam and I'd share with my Vietnamese friends. They had no idea what I'm talking about. So I started to realize it wasn't just an English issue. It was not just linguistic. It was also the way the media is in Vietnam, which is a bit more top level, doesn't do significant deep dives into particular subjects all the time. It's definitely a quantity over quality situation here. And it's still, even 7-8 years since we launched Saigoneer, not much has changed in the media landscape in Vietnam either, on either English or the Vietnamese side. So yeah, I think it was just a coming out of wanting a platform that didn't exist and figured, all right, well, let's just kind of start it and see how that goes. Not that we were, me and Alberto, my co-founder, who's an IT guy and more on the creative side of things, we never had started businesses before, either of us. I had worked for ad agencies in New York. He had been mostly studying, so he just had his master's degree right before we started, just completed that. So we were both novices and just, yeah, we're like, let's just try something. It wasn't a business from the beginning. It was a hobby or something to try. And here we are.
I actually discovered you guys so a few years back when I was on Facebook, and then I started to look at some pictures of the old Saigon, like the old city. And I was wondering, like, what's your approach of content creation, or what do you decide just to put on Saigoneer, and what do you decide to not put on Saigoneer?
In the beginning, it was because it was just the two of us, and myself pretty much doing the content on my own at that point. It was really focusing on things that were quick and easy to produce. So I think you could say it was more a reproduction of content, the best content you could kind of find. So like curating content about Vietnam from across multiple sources and putting it all in one place and kind of portraying it in a contextual way. We were trying to put out 5 articles a day, every day, with just the two of us, and both of us had full-time jobs at the time. But I knew, having read websites like Saigoneer, what we wanted Saigoneer to be, that continuity was very important, that you couldn't go a day and just wake up in the morning and say, I don't feel like writing any articles today, because then you lose the momentum of being a source of constant information. So that was the content model in the beginning, was just to make as much content, or like say 4 or 5 articles a day that were good, or as good as they could be, but they weren't produced in-house. They were not original content, and B, we had nobody else. It was just us. We were bootstrapping. So it was also within the amount of time that we had to be able to put out information. So of course we work on the weekends. We would meet in cafes every night after work and just go through that. Decibel, we used to work there all the time, which now closed a couple of years ago. So over time, it's definitely changed. After 3 or 4 years and starting to make money off of it, we started to hire a team. So now, for example, we're 15 full-time staff, whereas it started as 2 people. And most of our staff are editorial staff. So we spend a lot of time still doing some of the curated content in terms of sourcing content from other sources and repackaging it in a better, more contextual kind of way and framing it differently. But also we spend a great deal of time and money creating original content. That is to say, articles, illustrations, and photos that you couldn't find anywhere else. So our value proposition for a lot of our readers, I mean, look, we're writing in English and in Korean. For those 2 groups of people, they're pretty limited by the number of sources that they can access in Vietnam. There's just not a lot out there. But for Vietnamese speakers and local Vietnamese, who are our biggest audience, the most of our users are that category of people, they have access to Vietnamese language publications. So for them, and the reason we're able to retain a high amount of local readership is because we're creating content that is only available on our website and nowhere else. So that's how we try to, that we've figured out over time, that's our value proposition, is just to create stuff that doesn't exist on other platforms.
Because as a founder, because you guys started with just 2 people, and then now you have 15 people for staff. How do you know because I get the same issue as well. I'm a founder, how to create content, good content, and how do you know it's good, and then how do you actually pass that kind of skill to your staff so they can do the work for you, and then how smooth the process is, so you can teach someone else, okay, this is a good content and this is not a good content. And I understand the contextualization and then repackaging of the content is one of the technical aspects of that, but it's like an art, or actually it's very scientific, and then you can actually show people you do that way, that way, and that way? Is it how do you see that?
Well, I think Alberto and I were lucky to, like I said, we never started businesses before, so we were certainly weak on a lot of core competency issues when we started. So, how to make a P&L, or how to do things like that. And that's, we've learned that over time. So naturally, though, I think both of us are pretty good judges of character and are good at hiring people who are better than us at things. So let's say, you start with 5 or 6 different components of running the business, finance or editorial, photography, illustrations, video work. And at the beginning, you do it all yourself because that's all you can do. But then over time, you start to, instead of being a jack of all trades, master of none, you start to identify people who are experts in that one thing. And then you compile a group of people who do that. So when we hired our first editorial staff, her name was Dana, and she was with us for 3 years. She had worked in media before. We hadn't. So she came in and she's like, where's your style guide? And we're like, we don't have a style guide. And she's like, okay, what are you guys going to write about next week? And we're like, oh, we're just figuring out what we're going to write about tomorrow. And so she kind of came in and formalized a lot of these kinds of things in terms of having an editorial schedule and consistency across the way we write, and just brought it up to an extra level of professionalism. And we've done that a few times. I mean, a lot of our editorial hires were either people who are more qualified than us, or people who had more potential than we did. And maybe if they didn't have the skill set, they were able to learn from the more advanced people in the organization. And those were who trained the interns who 4 or 5 years later are now full-time staff and in senior management roles. So I think, the answer to the question isn't, there is no manual. I mean, Alberto and I just hired the right people, and then they passed down knowledge to other staff. And we were just lucky to have recruited really, really well over the years.
It's funny because I expected you would actually be the one passing the experience and the torch to the younger generation, but then it's building the business is really about hiring more experienced people that can do a better job than you and actually just set up the process, like the editorial design and all that. Is that right?
Yeah, process is certainly important. And automation, I mean, that's kind of a trite word in startup culture, but you just get it to the point where you don't have to touch anything and that you don't have to micromanage. I've worked for a lot of companies, as you have, and I think we both know one of the pitfalls is if you have a lot of upper management checking every little thing and spending a lot of time micromanaging people. And I mean, part of that is you have to hire the right people who don't need to be micromanaged, and that probably is the key to that, how that works. It's not like you can hire people who need to be micromanaged and don't micromanage them. That's not going to work out really well. Um, so I think, yeah, it goes back to what I was saying, is just hiring the right people and working with them on process and saying, instead of giving them process and say, this is how it works, you say, all right, like, let's sit down together and, okay, let's go A through Z. What does it take to put an article out? Or what does it take to commission a freelance piece? And then over time, you kind of have everything set. So when you do have to hire new people, the playbook already exists, and you don't have to spend the large amount of time training, doing retraining, and taking your focus off of other things like growth and trying to build the product instead of just maintaining it. But I will go back to one thing you mentioned before, which is like, okay, how do you know what content works or doesn't? I think we knew what the voice was. It was validated by our traffic and by the response to Facebook posts and Instagram posts and things like that, and to people talking about it. Of course, though, we have to also look at data. So, every month we have a data meeting with the editorial team, and we see what posted well, what didn't. We see how much time went into creating a specific type of content. So, if you spent 10 times longer to create a 3,000 word article, did it gain the same amount of traffic as 10 articles? Kind of, you have to see where resource allocation goes, because even though our team has grown, we don't have an unlimited amount of time to write stuff. So you have to make sure that you're putting your editorial efforts in the right direction to extract the right amount of value. And sometimes you don't need that one for one. It doesn't have to, work out mathematically, but you do have to see, it's like pretty obvious you don't need to spend 20 hours writing a piece of content that nobody's going to read. And that's how we try to use data to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen.
Because it seems like in the world of media, is like where differentiation is key, because it makes that, if you create some great content that can really truly engage with your audience, and then it is originally your content, then this is when I can see the audience starts to stick and then come back to your website and watch you and follow your Facebook page and all this kind of thing. That's actually how I can feel like the media landscape is working.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right on. There's some weird things that happen, though. I mean, for example, one of our curated pieces that maybe takes 30 minutes to write, like Uniqlo is opening in Vietnam,
Sure.
will get 20 times more traffic than a piece that takes a week to really put out. So again, going back to data, like if you just look at numbers, you'd be like, all right, well, we're never going to write original content then, because we'll just focus on stuff that gets hits, which I think is a fallacy in terms of brand stuff like you're kind of getting at, which is we try to find a mix to say there are going to be some articles that drive high levels of traffic, and there are going to be other ones that might not, and they might, but they also might not, and we have to just do it to see what is the outcome. But in the worst case scenario, they create a certain brand touch point that, like, okay, Saigoneer is putting out a certain level of content that is different from other media platforms in the market that probably are way more focused on how many clicks content's getting, and that's pretty much the only KPI they care about. For us, there's times we're like, wow, we spent a lot of money and time on that, didn't really get as much traffic as we were hoping, but we don't stop making it, because at the end of the day, it's important for the brand, and that's kind of more unquantifiable, but you can see hints of it here and there of why it's important, and that's why we keep doing it.
So before we move to the next slide, I was just wondering about one thing, about the editorial, who gets to decide what you're going to put on the website, and what's the mindset, what the approach about we're going to talk about this, or we're going to talk about that, and this is you deciding, or is there like a team behind, or how do you deal with this?
There's a team behind. So as I mentioned before, I don't like to, neither myself nor Alberto like to micromanage. So we've hired a team over the years. So some of them, I think on our editorial team at this point, everybody has been around for at least 2 or 3 years at minimum. So they know what the voice of the website is. So once you know that they know that, then, and you trust them, you leave them to their own devices to kind of program the content. And you also hire people who would be readers of the website as well. So we have a mix of expats who are, professional journalists. They write for The Atlantic and The Guardian and things like that. Or they have a master's degree in poetry and this kind of level of stuff. Or you have local Vietnamese who maybe went to RMIT, because of course we don't write in Vietnamese at the moment. That will start next week. But you just get these kind of people who are international minded, sophisticated, who are nerdy and just kind of want to write about things and see things on the website that they would want to see and that they would want to read about if they were a consumer. And then the play is just that you have to hope and check and make sure that that mentality applies to enough other people of our readers that say like, yeah, like we are also interested in those kinds of pieces of content as well. So we've hired the people who we think are our audience to organize and decide what the content will be. So we have a weekly editorial meeting every Monday. And in that meeting, we go through the original content coming up for the week or what's in the pipeline, going through each writer. And sorry if you hear some ambient noise behind me of Vietnam street sounds. But yeah, at the end of the day, the team dictates the content and we're just there to lend support, do a little bit of not fact checking, but gut checking. If they say, oh, we want to do an article about this, 99% of the time, no problem. But maybe 1% of the time, there's something, a little more politically sensitive or something of that nature. We're like, yeah, you got to pump your brakes. We can't write about that, unfortunately. But happens maybe once every quarter.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm going to move now to the next slide, and we're going to talk about the business model of Saigoneer. So from my understanding, like you guys actually set up a business like that relies on advertising, and that means like you need to get like a bunch of brands spending money just to be on your website, and then they're gonna pay for that, and you may have different format, and then you need to have audience that they are looking for as well, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about the major challenges or like the intricacies, like the details of that business model when you have to run that and actually go and talk to the brands and see if it fits? Okay.
Yep.
Sure. I think you're speaking right now, but for some reasons, the sound is not connected anymore.
So we're lucky to have two things. One is a niche audience that are generally international minded and sophisticated, which
yeah. So
I think it's just really delayed for some reason. It just slowed down a lot because it was the same for you. It was like a good 20 seconds between.
yep. So what we could do is actually really simple. I'm gonna turn off my camera, and then you should maybe, if you can.
Yeah, we'll just work with it.
Yes.
I guess. Yeah.
That's working right now for you. Like you can hear me properly.
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
Cool. Yeah. So we could move forward with the business model part, like the challenges talking to the brands.
Long delay though. Sure. Yeah, I'll just go for it. So yeah, we're lucky to have a niche website, which means that our audience is sophisticated and educated. And that's definitely obviously plays into higher spending and being kind of a lifestyle target. So a lot of brands seek that out, especially in a market where there are not a lot of niche media properties to reach that kind of audience. So the other part we're lucky is that a lot of the brands we work with are readers of Saigoneer or Urbanist Hanoi, which is our site up in Hanoi. So 90% of the time that we walk into meetings, business development meetings, the client already knows who we are or is a reader. So that makes it a lot easier to sell through stuff. And then, of course, over time, we've developed a bunch of products from banners, but more recently focusing on content. So that would be creating articles or videos for brands in an editorial style, and then monetizing those and giving the brands kind of a more editorial voice, not a PR advertorial tone, which is pretty frequent here to have that. So it's we do a little production work on the side as well. So some of our clients who work with us on the media side, if they need to have internal brand assets created, like videos, brand videos or something, that's something else we're able to help out with. But this has been a challenge because, well, the whole model is a challenge because it relies on many years of building up client relationships. So we're basically, say 90% B2B instead of B2A, A being agency. So a lot of our client relationships are just that. They're like things that we've known these people for years. I mean, you and I are, this is a good example. We've known each other for 5. With our other clients, we have a very high focus on customer service, and that's served very well because when you create that kind of relationship, people move to other companies, and then you're able to work with them in those new brands. But also, as they leave their old companies, they introduce you to the new team and have good things, hopefully, to say about you. And then that just kind of becomes, a cross-pollination of like bees going flower to flower, and we're able to expand our network on that, along with the brand expanding and for cold calling or more direct sales. Then it also works out better that way. So that's how we monetize mostly, is through making sure that we have the products that the market wants, or that the West is kind of moving towards, and try to get in front of that. I mean, when we started to do paid content, we call partner content, where we write about brands, it was really hard to sell that when we first started because it had been in New York and London and Japan and Hong Kong. I'd been doing that already for a while, but the Vietnamese media landscape had not. So we were kind of first to market with that and had to do a lot of client training and explanation. Even in the very beginning, it was just explaining what digital media was and digital marketing. You had a lot of traditional marketing teams for 5-star hotels and stuff like that, and they were print buyers or TV buyers or whatever. So I remember first doing business development 5-6 years ago, and it was not this our rates. It was like, this is digital marketing, and this is what you need to do. These days, most of those same clients have hired, digital teams. So that's not an issue of digital marketing. It's just finding solutions to strategies. If they say, okay, here's our marketing strategy, and then I say, okay, well, here's the products wise what would fit for you guys to do on Saigoneer, and then figure out the budget, the timing, and go from there.
Gotcha. It's not like I would just want to ask a follow-up question on the business model. Like, so your sales coming from brands, but then you can go either direct or agencies, and then you build those relationships. I understand that. Like, do you tend to get more business coming from agencies now, or like do you still have like to build all those direct relationship with the brands, and then like how has it evolved over time?
At the moment, it's 90%. 90% is brand direct. Part of that is a function of, especially these market, and I think probably most places. We are small. I mean, we only have some hundreds of thousands of readers per month. So while we have a very high value audience, it's not a mass market one. And I think most agency buyers here are more focused on that. We do work with a few agencies. I mean, that's how we get brands like Uniqlo and Muji to work with us. But on the whole, we're pretty aware that if we want to get to that agency level of stuff, we need to have a mass market product, with just something we're actually working on doing in next Wednesday. So keep an eye out for that. But that's even then going to take a while to build out. That's going to be a Vietnamese language product, and I guess we'll probably talk about that a little bit down the presentation. So I'll leave it there for now.
Sure, no problem. I just want to make sure like we can move like a little bit quicker now. Like in terms of like challenges, like for Saigoneer, Like, what are the trickiest parts like you had to deal in in this country, like being a media company?
I think it's pretty obvious for most people. It's you have to self-censor yourself, which is fine. So we don't make news. We focus on topics when we create original content that are cultural or eat and drink, travel, things like that, that are what we can call safe content. And that's fine. I don't think when we started out, we wanted to be a news website. It's way more fun and interesting to write about food and travel and stuff like that. But you still have to be aware, even within those contexts and those confines of content, just to I think one of the things we try to do is we don't try to tell a story without being able to tell the full story. So if there's some historical event or some cultural thing that we want to talk about, and through the research process we find that there's some touchy areas of that thing, rather than try to tell the story and leave things out that are a bit more sensitive, we just don't write about it. And that's just a fact of life. So that's difficult. And being a media company in any country is hard from a business model standpoint. I don't think it's a surprise. I mean, most of the people on the call today probably know and have heard about the challenges that media companies across the world have been facing for the last 5 or 10 years. And we certainly are facing some of those things in general as well. But we've organized the business in a way that we've tried to make us as resistant to those kind of issues that we can humanly be, and so far we've been able to do that. So we're pretty happy with where we are.
Cool. Okay. So, and next, and talking about the other companies around the world, what I've seen is many big news websites are actually evolving toward like a subscription, like more and more, just to get more revenue, right? Like we got the New York Times, we got the Washington Post, so on and so on. And the point is actually they're trying just to become less dependent on advertising. And then I wanted to know like your take on that. Are you thinking of that, or do you think that's something that is not your focus right away because you want to focus maybe on the audience and actually increase it to maybe over 1 million a month first, and then later you can think about what do you think about that?
I think you're right. I think in critical mass, we're not at a traffic level that we would be able to make enough revenue, like could probably have a hybrid to put things behind a paywall and charge people monthly subscriptions. That's just not something we're looking at doing. And then to take it a step further, if we were bigger, I don't know any website in Vietnam that has a subscription model. Zing doesn't, Viet Express doesn't, Deutsche, Tandien, none of them do. I might be missing one here or there, but I've checked probably, I think, most of the magazine and news websites that exist here pretty fairly recently, and it's something that is just not here yet, and that is probably based on just it not having been tried. It also is probably based on consumers, Vietnamese media consumers, not being trained to look at the products of media in that way, and that's not to blame them necessarily. I think it's probably representative of not having enough content in the market that people feel that has value to be paid for. I think, but it also is, the way that Vietnamese, there's a lot of Nielsen studies that show how Vietnamese consumers are different than like that. And there's probably a social contract that they're happy to see a lot of advertising and pop-ups rather than pay for a clean website and not to have exposure to lots of more invasive advertising strategies. But again, to be fair, that's nothing different. I mean, every country, as they go through their digital media life cycles, go through this too. I mean, if you go back 10, 15 years in the US or in Europe, it was the same thing. You had pop-ups everywhere and lots of more annoying autoplay ads, things like this. So I think it's probably just a natural evolution. And as the market so it gets more sophisticated, both in terms of what's being published and what consumers are expecting to have, perhaps we'll see a change in that, and subscription models may become more popular.
Sure. Have you tried something like maybe I'm going to throw like a couple things. So have you tried different ways of working with the brands, like aside from banners and maybe like newsletter or paid articles? it go well? Like, did you try something else, or yeah?
Not really. I think we've pretty much pegged what the market looks to buy here. I mean, we have a lot of, sure, I mean, we have to do a lot of proactive selling, go to clients and brands and say, hey, this is what we have, you should buy it. But we also get a lot of incoming requests, and people are like, hello, like, how much are your banners? How much are your articles? How much are your videos? How much is your newsletter? So, based on what sells, and I'm actually gonna move because this ran a little bit to a corner over here. So stick with me for a second. Hold on.
Take your time. Take your time.
There we go. Yep. Yeah, so based on those things, I think we have a pretty good idea of what
and
Vietnamese version that we're planning to release. We're actually making some that we have to also change, even just by Earth. You're going to have to of how you.
Okay. I'm just making sure like the connection is stable. Can you hear me properly now? Yes, it seems like you're really good right now, because like you were just cutting out for like around 5 seconds, and then we couldn't actually get all the words. But now you're cutting again. So I'm just gonna try to see like if I can work on something.
Let's see. Hold on a second. Let me try this.
Seems like the connection is perfect. I can watch you.
Is that better at all?
Yeah, I can watch the video perfectly. It's all clear to me, and the sound is also is clear.
Okay.
Right? Cool. Yeah. So yeah, for the business, like trying new things and all that, like, well, the focus is pretty much on on those ad formats, and and I guess like the focus for you now is really all about like how to drive the readership and making sure like people like keep more and more people will read on Saigoneer, and that, if I understand well, like your answer.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of putting out content at the same rate or a higher rate of what we've been doing, and continue to write about the kind of topics that people want to see. At the end of the day, it's organic. There's nothing. I mean, you can do things like pay Facebook and things like that. Really, the main consideration when you want to get more readership and keep readers is to keep the quality of content consistent and put it out at a consistent rate as well.
Okay, gotcha. Right. So, talking about like the next step for you, actually. So, really, we're interested to learn more about like, so you're the founder, you got the vision. What would be the next step for Saigoneer, like to move from this English website? You started in 2012. What's going to be the next film for the next 10 years or 5, 10 years?
So short term, long term. Short term is that after COVID, it's been pretty apparent that there's going to be certain limitations to international expansion, which was originally going to be the plan for 2020 and 2021 and down the road. But like a lot of other businesses, we've realized that, all right, at least for now, we need to go local. So that is why, as I mentioned a bit before, we're going to pivot domestically and launch a Vietnamese language version of Saigoneer called Urbanist Vietnam next week. And the goal for that is to, replicate the content style with some tweaks, of course. It's going to skew more millennial, younger, and try to grow that out to access larger clients. So instead of a few 100,000 readers per month, try to get to a few million, at least to start with, and then grow it from there. So in doing market research and talking with people, it became pretty apparent that there is a desire for the kind of content we do in English to exist also in Vietnamese, especially if we're able to alter it and tailor it to this younger millennial audience that I mentioned. So that's the short term. Long term is once we're able to travel and get on planes and things like that, to expand to most of the cities in Asia, with exceptions in China probably, and not so much Southeast Asia, but more East Asia. So Taipei and Singapore would probably be the first two markets, but then after that, we go into Bangkok, Manila, Seoul, Tokyo, Osaka, maybe Hong Kong, although Hong Kong's not looking so great these days for a press play. And then to grow a network across that. So, some of the content can float between different sites that are more regional, but so most of the content on any of those websites will be specific to that geography and that language. And then on the revenue side of that, certainly we can continue to go our traditional advertising model, but to have a network of websites like that will allow us to go after some regional ad buy budgets. So there are a lot of multinational corporations that are active across all those different markets that I had mentioned, and they have local budgets and they have regional and international budgets. And the bigger you get, the more access you have to the bigger slices of the bigger pies. So that's going to be something we want to take advantage of, and potentially also create a mini ad network within our network that we're able to control the inventory across all the different sites. And for, again, regional brands who want to be visible in multiple markets, they can buy across our network. So we can, again, kind of try to leverage and aggregate the value that we have and give that to advertisers and sponsors and brands.
Got it. So I mean, like the urbanist is really going to be like more localized. Like it's going to be written in Vietnamese, Vietnam, and all the other local languages, like in Taiwanese or Chinese, I should say, or Japanese, and so on and so on. So is it going to keep the same vibes like Saigoneer had like maybe 8 years ago? Like you're going to keep the same DNA, or is it going to be really like you're going to be a news website and that's pretty much of it, or how you going to drive that?
Yeah, the DNA I think will be similar. That's a really good way of putting it. It'll be different, and you have to locally adjust to each market and see where things are different, because they always are, both in terms of the content that you create, the way you approach advertising and things like this. So yeah, you have to localize in every sense of the word. So maybe the websites all come from the same mother and all have that in common, but each have their own distinct personality, environment in which they grew up in. So certainly across the board, we'll localize not only based on the brand name, so Urbanist Taiwan or Taipei or Urbanist Singapore, but they're also going to have to acclimate to, and you have to start out with that idea that you have to know, I don't know, like from the get-go, that there's going to be 70% of you're confident, you're like, all right, 70% of this recipe is going to work, 30%'s not, and I don't know which. And you can do market research and talk to people on the ground and hire country managers that know the market. But even then, things kind of have a life of their own. And for things like media that are content based, it's supply and demand. So what do consumers of the content want to see? And they'll vote with their clicks. So if there's certain content types that we see do much better in a market that do horribly in another market, we'll have to make those decisions in real time and make sure that we're delivering the right product to the right audience.
Got it. And I'm going to ask my last question for today. So as a founder, like what kind of skill you wish to have now so you can solve like one of your most important problems for the next 12 months? What and why?
Well, I think money is the easy answer to that question. So that is the answer, I would say, is especially in COVID-related periods where you don't know what's going to happen in tomorrow or the next week or the next month, as things stabilize as they are now or after a given wave. And Vietnam, in particular, has done a really good job at getting their stuff together to make sure that they're able to rebound quickly. All it takes is one outbreak somewhere, or in Saigon, for example, which luckily did not happen this last round, but everything shuts down, advertisers go quiet, businesses close, either temporarily or permanently, and it's really hard to run a business of any kind with uncertainty. And the one thing that can really help address uncertainty is money, that you have enough that if half your advertisers don't pay, or their red invoices, or you're used to having X amount of contracts or X amount of revenue per month, of new contracts, and when businesses are closed, they're not signing new contracts, that you don't have to worry about paying staff or being able to continue the business. Luckily, we've had the experience of the first wave. So when the second wave that we've had here, whatever number we're at, people say 2 or 3, I don't get bogged down in the semantics. You learn from that, and you are either maybe more cautious about how you spend your money, which we definitely are, but also have a confidence of knowing how it ends. With the first wave, the big one that was here, the hardest part was not knowing when it ended or how it ended, and it was the uncertainty that I think was really tough for businesses, but also for just people in general. I think people don't do well with that, and as we see in the U.S. and other places in the world where COVID is still raging on, it's that I think is the mental struggle, is the uncertainty. So we're here. Luckily, we're doing okay. Outside of cash, I don't think there is much else. I mean, all we need to do is just continue down the path that we're going down. We're very confident in the Vietnamese play that we're putting together. We've been getting really good feedback on the initial stuff we've been putting out internally, and with close friends that we've been showing stuff to, and also clients of ours who have been, I don't know if demanding is the right word, but certainly asking us when we were going to make a Vietnamese product, because I think they've wanted to see a website that has the same level of content quality that exists on Saigoneer consistently in the local language. So yeah, money's my answer.
It's pretty simple, but actually it does pretty make sense during this COVID time. I would say I don't know how long it's going to last, but definitely like people with a lot of cash in the bank account will be able to endure longer. I think that's the right verb to use. But yeah, well, that wraps up our talk number 4 today. And Brian, thank you very much for spending some time actually on this talk show. And then hopefully we'll be able to meet each other in the next month, and then we can get face to face and share more. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and yeah, look forward to seeing you. Hopefully your flight all happens when it's supposed to and you don't get delayed.
Yep. All right. This is the end of the Founders Talk number 4. I could see that a lot of people were trying just to get on the live stream. It seems like more like 100 people. For some reasons, I don't know how you managed to gather that many people. But then we have recorded the session, and then we will make it available on Facebook and YouTube, so you can watch it again. If you want to reach Brian, you can. Do you want people to reach you if they're interested to know more, or actually to apply for a job, or actually try to spend money as a brand, or how should they reach you?
Yeah, anybody who wants to reach me directly, just email me at brian@saigoneer.com. Saigoneer, if you go to the footer of the website, there are plenty of links for if you'd like to contribute, be a writer, get an internship, anything like that. Plenty of links that will send you in the right direction. Otherwise, any general inquiries or anything outside of editorial or that kind of related stuff, you can just email me directly.
Okay, I'll put that on the post. Thanks, Brian, and have a really good day over there.